Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
I want to say a good morning and Shabbat Shalom, welcoming in this holiday and awakening our hearts and minds to a day of rest and celebration. And as we welcome those from around our community, our teachers from our Torah Center, our youth director, Kara Liu, many members of our community. In fact, we have other teachers as well in our adult education program. Janet Liss, who I think might be here for possibly another reason as well. And I want to welcome Rabbi Cassie Kale as well, of course, a colleague, and I hope I can say friend. It's a delight to be together celebrating not just this day of Shabbat, but this morning of celebration for a young person as he takes his first steps in our community as an adult. Xander, we're not just here. There are people who are joining us online as well. And so I want to actually say welcome to everyone who is joining us on Facebook and on YouTube. If you are with us here on either of those platforms, I invite you to go to the chat and just offer a Shabbat Shalom, a Mazel Tov to Xander. You'll have to go on later and see all of the people who've said Mazel Tov. And I want to make a note as well that if you are joining us online, not now, but when we get to the Mourner's Kaddish, our Mourner's Prayer at the end of our service, if you would like to add the names of those that you are thinking of, you'll find at tilb.org a live stream that is slightly higher quality, and also we'll be able to see the names that you might offer in those in that chat as well. Well, welcome everyone, and a special thank you to David York for joining us this morning, for leading the service together as a team this morning. It always an absolute, I can't use the word joy for obvious reasons, but it is always, I always so much that has joy in it too.
It counts. Oneg.
Oneg. There is such oneg. In leading together with you.
I agree.
And we this morning also welcome one another with words of prayer. In fact, we together are going to transform this space, this room, into a sanctuary with our hearts, our voices. But before that, and you may have anticipated this just a little bit of housekeeping. So, first of all, if anybody has brought a cell phone this morning, I know that we would never bring a cell phone to services. None of us would ever bring our cellular device to a service. If you happen to bring it, I want to invite us just to set it on silent, or I'm actually going to even turn my phone all the way off so that we can have this morning's prayer experience without that particular distraction. Additionally, I want to note that Los Angeles County Health Guidelines and now California State Guidelines ask that all of us remain masked throughout our service, and that is masked over our mouth as well as our nose. And I imagine that many of us are now saying that is all well and good. But I don't know if, Ellie, you're sitting there saying, but why are you in Cantor sitting here without masks? Thank you, David. Where are our masks? So we very recently took COVID tests and tested negative. And so to help us here, we are removing our mask anytime it's just us at the podium. We've also cleared the first couple of rows as an additional precaution as well this morning. Anytime you see anyone up at the bima this morning and they don't have a mask on, they have taken a very recent COVID test and, of course, have tested negative. Now, I want to invite us to take a look at the prayer book. There's a prayer book in the seat back in front of you. I'm going to actually grab one as well. And you'll notice that this prayer book was designed in a particular way. You'll find the traditional words of each blessing on the right-hand side of the page. And next to it is the transliteration of those same prayers. And for some of us, we're going to follow along in the words of the Hebrew. For others, our hearts and minds might wander throughout the service, and as they do, I invite us to let our eyes wander as well. On the bottom of each page is commentary, and there are alternative readings on the left. We are all going to find our way into prayer in a slightly different way this morning. So for some of us, that's going to be following along in the Hebrew. For others, it's going to be simply humming along to the melodies. And for still others, it's going to be just letting these prayers wash over us. For all of us, I invite us simply to let this service be whatever we need it to be. As we all come into Shabbat, we all enter into prayer in a slightly different way. Well, this morning, as we celebrate our young person, Xander, as he takes his first steps as an adult, as he shows us the learning that he has been doing for many months and years to come to this place, we welcome people here and online from all around the country, here to celebrate in this moment, just like the prophet Balaam, looking out over the Jewish people, looked out and saw Ma Tovu. How beautiful is this community, not just because, yes, we are quite handsome, right? Not just that. Thank you, David. Yeah. But he said, Ma Tovu, the rabbis say, because he saw the way that we came together as a community, the way we treated each other with love, with kindness, and it is with those same words that we welcome each other this morning. I invite us to turn to page 74 of our prayer books. We begin with Ma Tovu. Well, as we begin our service, I'd like to call up now Xander as he takes on not just the mantle of leading us in prayer, but for the first time takes on the wearing of a talit, this sacred garment that begins memories now carried from generations past and continues to be celebrated this morning. And so I'd like to call up Bubby, Janet Liss, to present Xander's talit to him this morning.
Come on over, sweetheart. Dear Xander, come here so I can see you. The purpose of a talit is to help the person wearing it create a private, personal space as they prepare themselves for prayer. You can take off your mask. My rabbi, Rabbi Kelter, used to literally wrap his talit around his head to block everything out and center himself. And don't worry, I won't mess up your hair. Most people, when anticipating their bar mitzvah, look forward to shopping for a new talit. But you didn't seem overly excited. So I gave you a couple choices. You could buy a new talit, or we could buy a new talit, one that you would choose. You could wear one of your mom's, or you could wear your great-grandfather's, which is pretty old, it's very traditional, it's even worn out in places. And before I even finished presenting you the choices, you jumped in with your answer, you would wear your great-grandfather's. Now, you never knew your great-grandfather. You're a Saba Rabba. So let me tell you a little bit about him. He is your Saba's dad and your mother's grandfather. His name was Philip, and he came from Romania. He was short, had a big smile, and he was always moving. He seemed like he hopped rather than walked wherever he went. He had no more than a third-grade education, but he had great charisma, and it was his charisma and talent that enabled him to survive the Holocaust. You see, by then, your great-grandfather had become a master carpenter. And I can only imagine what he said to convince the Nazi officers that they needed him to build whatever they might want for their homes. But he did convince them, and build he did. The Nazis had him make furniture for them for years. So by his wits, his charm, and his talent, he survived. After World War II, he moved his family to Israel, where your Saba was only 1 year old. And one of the things I remember clearly about your great-grandfather, Philip, is how he loved and supported your Saba. He was always there for him in every imaginable way. And even though he would sometimes put your Saba through the ringer with question after question, he always came through for him. He supported your Saba in every choice he made and everything he did. Xander, your great-grandfather cannot physically be here with you today, but his talit reminds us that he and so many others are here in spirit. So as you wrap yourself in this talit, may it remind you that you can always create that much-needed, quiet, personal space for yourself. May it remind you that you carry with you the traditions of your people, and that you too are surrounded by family, friends, and community that will always support you today, tomorrow, and beyond. I love you. Hold on.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahitatef batzitzit.
I'll do here. Does that comfortable? I love you.
I hereby accept the obligation of fulfilling these mitzvot as commanded in our Torah. You shall be holy, for I, your God, am holy. You shall not render an unjust decision. Leave something of what you possess to the poor. Do not hate your fellow human being. Judge your neighbor fairly. Do not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor. Do not gossip or spread rumors. Do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Love your neighbor as yourself. I am Adonai, your God. We continue with the Baruch on page 108. Please rise in body or in spirit. Please join in the Hebrew on page 110. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, yotzer or uvorei hoshech, oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. Hameir la'aretz v'ladarim, alecha barachamim, uv tuvo mechadesh, b'chol yom tamid, ma'aseh b'reshit. Ma rabu machasecha Adonai, kulanu b'chochma asita mala ha'aretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al sheva ma'aseh yadecha. V'ol ma'orei or she'asita yifa'arucha sela. Or hadash al Sion tamid v'nizkeh kulanu ma'orei le'oro. Baruch atah Adonai yotzer ha'morot. You are praised, who rolls out the rough, raw clay of the universe into delicate vessels of light. And from nothing at all we could perceive in a world that is turned old, a shimmering new creation right before our eyes, made this moment just for us. How much of life reveals your presence? How much of Torah unfolds from each new flower, from each new wave that breaks on the sea? You are praised, who forms from the clay that cloaks our lives, the delicate vessels which contain our light. We continue with the Ahava Rabbah on page 112. Ahava Rabbah Ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu Chemla Gedola Vitera Chamalta Aleinu Ba'avor Avotenu Ve'imotenu Shabbatchu V'cha Vatlamdem Chukei Chayim Kol Tichonenu Utlamdenu.
והארננו בתורתך, ודבק לבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבינו לאהבה ויראה את שמך. ולא נבוש, ולא ניכלם, ולא הארננו בתורתך, ודבק לבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבינו לאהבה ויראה את שמך.
We continue with the Shema on page 114. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Please be seated. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha v'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shartam uv'kumecha uv'shartam le'oludecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'ashitem et kol mitzvotai v'hayitem gushim le'eloheichem ani Adonai Eloheichem asher hatziati etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim l'chayot lechem le'elohim ani Adonai Eloheichem.
Adonai Elohechem emet.
Please join me on page 122 for the Micha Mocha. Micha Mocha ba'elim Adonai Micha Mocha ne'edar ba'kodesh norat techilot osef eleh norat techilot osef eleh Shir chadasha shivu geulim l'shimcha al sfat hayam Yachan kulam hodu l'cheim l'chu v'ameru Adonai yimlov le'olam va'ed Adonai yimlov le'olam va'ed Lai 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 Zor Yisrael, Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, Ufdei chin umecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael. Go aleinu Adonai Tzevaot Shemo Kadosh Yisrael. Baruch Atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. We continue with the Amidah on page 124. Please rise in body or in spirit. Adonai Sefataitita Ufi Yagitechilatecha Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanara El Elyon Gomel Hasadim Tovim Ve'unei Hakol V'zocher Hasdei Avot Ve'imahot Umevi Geula Livnei B'neihem Lema'an Shemo Ba'ahava Melech Ozer U'Mashiach U'Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Bezrat Sarah ata gibor le'olam Adonai, mechayei hakol ata, rav lechoshia, mashiv haruach, umarid hagashem, mechalkel hayim bechesed, mechayei hakol berachamim ravim, somech noflim verafei cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato lishenei afar, michamocha ba'al gevurot, umido melach, melech v'mid, umekayem, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman ata l'chachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, v'chayei hakol. We continue with the Kedusha on page 130. Let us sanctify your name on earth as it is sanctified in the heavens above. As it is written by your prophet, holy, holy, holy is Adonai Tzevaot. God's presence fills the whole earth. Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam, keshem shmakdishim oto b'shmei marom, kakatuv al yad neviecha, v'karazeh el zeh amar, kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Elo kol haaretz kevodo, Adir, Adirenu, Adonai, Adonenu, Ma'adir, Shimcha b'chol haaretz, Baruch kevod Adonai, Mimkomo. Echad hu Eloheinu, hu Avinu, hu Malkeinu, hu Moshienu, v'hu Yashmienu, v'rachamav le'nei kol chai, ani Adonai Elohechem, yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohim Tzion, le'dor v'dor, hallelujah. Please be seated.
Ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador, nagid god lecha, uhul nitzach netzachim, uhul nitzach netzachim, kedushatcha nakdish, ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador, nagid god lecha, uhul nitzach netzachim, uhul nitzach netzachim, kedushatcha nakdish, v'shivchacha Eloheinu, mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed, ki el melech gadol, ki el melech gadol, hakadosh נצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. ברוך אתה אדוני
We continue on page 132. Please join us in singing Vishamru.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם בברית עולם. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם בברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני,
עשה אדוני
את השמיים
ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
וביום השביעי שבת וינפש.
שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Please turn to page 137 for Ritzeh. Ritzeh Adonai Eloheinu v'amcha Yisrael utfilatam ba'ahava tikabel uthi l'ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha. Baruch ata Adonai she'otcha levavcha b'yira na'avod. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to share its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment fall within our borders, may health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of our world. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name sanctify every home and every heart. Praised are you, Adonai, who blesses our people with peace. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim, aleinu v'ol kol Yisrael amecha. Barchenu yotzrenu kulanu ke'echad, ba'or panecha, ki va'or panecha natata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu, Torat Chaim v'ahavat chesed, utzdaka uvracha v'rachamim, v'hayim v'shalom. V'tov b'einecha v'avcha et amcha Yisrael, b'chol et uvchol sha'a b'shlamecha. Baruch atah Adonai hamvarach et amo Yisrael bashalom.
Please continue silently, either with the words that are in the pages of the Siddur or the words of your own heart, and we'll gather together in song in a few moments.
We continue our service now with the center of our gathering. In fact, historically, it seems as though the entire service was constructed simply for this moment, for us to be able to take out the stories of our people and read them together, gleaning from them what we can, learning, as our sages say, hafochba ve'afochba, turn it and turn it, for everything is in it. Well, this morning, just a quick note about our hakafot before I invite us to open our ark, and that is that given the day and time that we are in, we are going to do the hakafot. We are going to take the Torah out in the community, and I promise you we're going to bring the Torah by you. Xander will take the Torah throughout our entire sanctuary this morning. But a note about hugging. We in normal times would give big hugs to one another in this moment as we bring the Torah out. I know one person in particular has a tradition of, rather than placing their hand on the Torah and kissing their hand, they place their hand on the student and kiss their hand. In this moment, I invite us instead to offer that very same love, but in a way that is mindful of, again, the day and age, the pandemic that we are in. And so I invite us to say Mazel Tov. Perhaps a squeeze on the shoulder or something along those lines, but to not hug in this moment so that we can make sure that we are all keeping one another safe. I do invite us to place our hand on the Torah, or as is our custom, I don't know how Xander feels about this, but maybe a hand on Xander's shoulder as well, and to kiss our hand or the prayer book that has that, of course, with our mask on as well. Well, we are going to bring this Torah out literally, and then we are going to open the words of these same scriptures this morning. And so to pass the Torah down to Xander this morning, I'd like to call up his grandfather, Bilu Mararo, his grandmother, Janet Liss, his father, Jonathan Loving, his mother, Rabbi Michal Loving, and Xander, of course, to our bima. The rest of the congregation I'd like to invite to please rise in body or in spirit.
In kamocha v'Elohim Adonai ve'en kema'asecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch le'olam vad Adonai oz le'amo yitin Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom Avraham hitiv al irtzonecha et Zion Tivna chomot Yerushalayim Tivna chomot Yerushalayim Kivecha levad batachnu Melech eram benisa Adon olamim Ki mitzion teitzei Torah Ki mitzion teitzei Torah Udevar Adonai mirushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Le'amo Yisrael Bikdushato
Hold on, one sec. Xander, I know I said I would separate my rabbinic speech from my parent speech, and I can't do it. I'm just crying already. I can do this. Apparently, it's very hard to separate the roles. Xander, what Bubby's saying so beautifully a few minutes ago was Lador Vador. It literally means from generation to generation. And here we are literally passing the Torah from generation to generation. Now, this is a scroll with the ancient words of our people, but it is more than that. It is a symbol of our tradition, of our history, of our collective memory of all of the Jewish people, for all the generations back to Avram and Sarai, Abraham and Sarah, right? When you take this Torah, you are accepting this amazing responsibility, this privilege of being a Jew, and all of the lessons that are inherent in these words. To care for one another, to do tikkun olam, to heal the earth, to always take your stand whenever you see an injustice, to say, no, this isn't right. I'm going to do my best to change it. And to be the best person you can be in our world so that the world can be a better place for everyone. You are up to the task, so it is my utter and distinct pleasure in my rabbinic role to hand you this Torah as you become bar mitzvah. And I love you.
No, beautiful.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadlu l'Adonai iti, unrom b'mashemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai hagedula, v'hagevura, v'hatiferet, v'hanetzach, v'hahod. Ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz, ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz. Lecha Adonai hamamlacha, v'haminaseh lechol erush. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, ha'olam omer. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, ha'olam omer. Al ha'torah ve'al ha'avoda ve'al gemilut chasadim. Al ha'torah ve'al ha'avoda ve'al gemilut chasadim. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, ha'olam omer. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, ha'olam omer.
Please be seated. As we give Xander a moment to find his place in the Torah this morning, I'd like to share just a brief word about this particular scroll. This scroll comes to us from the Queen Mary. And while members of our community were making their way to a new home here in the United States, both those who are traveling and those who emigrated from their various places around the world and immigrated to the United States, well, in that space, as they were making their way across the seas on the Queen Mary, they prayed in a particular sanctuary. That sanctuary had this very same Torah in it. I think it's a reminder to us that even when we are finding our way from one place to another, we, a community that has always found home all over the world, that we similarly are at home anytime. Our scroll is opened anytime we read the stories of our people. Xander, of course, is finding his place in this home as he brings these words to life for us this morning. So we have different members of Xander's circle to help honor the different aliyot, the different readings this morning. And so for our first aliyah, I'd like to call up two Torah Center teachers who have had the very biggest influence on Xander's learning on Xander. And so it is my absolute joy to call up Judy Blumenthal and Nico Turin for our first Aliyah.
Nala Amo, Yitzhak ben Avraham, Yehudit bat Levi v'Sara, Laliyah HaTorah.
Baruchu et Adonai Hamforach.
Baruch Adonai Hamforach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamforach le'olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Vayar Yisrael et bnei Yosef, Vayomar mi ele, Vayomer Yosef el aviv, Banaihem, Asher natan li, Elohim bazeh, Vayomar, Kachem na elai, Va'avarchem. Ve'enei Yisrael kavdu mizoken lo yuchal lirot vayagesh otam elav vayishak lahem vayishkav lahem vaychabeg lahem.
We continue with the English translation of that very same reading.
When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he asked, "Who are these?" And Joseph said to his father, "They are my sons, whom God has given me here." He said, "Bring them to me. Pray that I may bless them." Israel's eyes had grown clouded with age. He could no longer see. Joseph brought them over to him, whereupon he kissed and hugged them.
We continue with our blessing after our Torah reading.
Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata betocheinu. Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Well, for our second Aliyah, we call up Xander's aunt and honorary uncle, Odelia Mararo and Antonio Tripazowski.
Nala Amod, Odelia bat Bilu v'Shulamit, Antonio Tripazowski, Laliyah HaTorah.
Baruchu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu michol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Vayomer Yisrael el Yosef ra'o fanecha lo filalti v'hinei hera'oti Elohim gam et zarecha vayitze Yosef Otam me'im birkav, vayishtahu la'apav artsa, vayikach Yosef, et shenehem, et Ephraim bimino, mishmol Yisrael, ve'et Menashe, bishmolo, mimin Yisrael, vayagesh elav, vayishlach Yisrael, et Menashe, Yisrael et Yamino, vayashet al rosh Ephraim, v'hu hatzair, va'et shemolo al rosh Menashe, shikel et yadav, ki Menashe ha-bechor. Israel then said to Joseph, I never expected to see your face again, and here God has shown me your progeny as well. Joseph then removed them from his knees and bowed down before him to the ground. Then Joseph took the two of them, Ephraim with his right hand to Israel's left, and Manasseh with his right hand to Israel's right, and he brought them close to him. But Israel stretched out his right hand and placed it on Ephraim's head, even though he was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, crossing his arms, though Manasseh was the firstborn.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. For our third aliyah, we have the opportunity to call up Xander's grandparents, Janet Liss and Bilu Mararo.
Nala Amod, Rachel bat Avram Beshulamit, Bilu ben Philip ben Miriam Lalia HaTorah.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayivarech et Yosef, vayomar, ha'Elohim, asher hitalchu avotai lefanav, Avraham vayitzchak, ha'Elohim, her'auti, me'odi ad hayom hazeh, ha'malach, Hagoel et alti mikol ra, Yivarech et hana Yivarech et hana arim, Vayikare vahem shami, V'shem avotai Avraham vayitzchak, Vayigu la'rov bekerev ha'aretz. He then blessed Joseph, saying, The God before whom walked my fathers Abraham and Isaac, the God who has shepherded me ever since I came into being until this day, the angel who has rescued me from all harm, bless these lads. Through them let my name and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac be recalled, and let them greatly multiply within the land.
ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
Amen. Amen. For our fourth aliyah, we call up Xander's parents, Rabbi Michal Loving and Jonathan Loving.
Nala Amod, Rav Michal, Bat Bilu Verachel, Yonatan ben Abraham Vesara, Lalia HaTorah.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher barucha banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Var Israel vayir Yosef ki yashit aviv yad yamino al rosh Ephraim vayera beinav vayitmoch yad aviv lehisir otal me'al rosh Ephraim al rosh Menashe Vayomer Yosef El avi lochein avi ki ze habchor shem yamincha al rosho vayme'ein aviv Vayomer yadati bani yadati gamhu yehyeh le'am v'gam hu yigdal v'ulam achiv hakaton yigdal mimenu v'zaro yehyeh melech hagoyim. When Joseph saw that his father had placed his right hand on Ephraim's head, it seemed wrong to him. So he took hold of his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head onto the head of Manasseh. Joseph said to his father, "Not that way, father. This is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused, saying, "I know, my son, I know. He too shall become a people, and he too shall be great. Yet his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations."
Overwhelmed by my son, totally forgot the tune. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai. Okay.
For our fifth and final aliyah, we have the opportunity to call up Xander himself. By nature of taking this aliyah, he takes his place in our community as a bar mitzvah.
Nala Amod, Nala Amod, Nala Amod, Habar Mitzvah, Avraham ben Yonatan v'Rav Michal, Aliyah HaTorah.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Amvarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen.
Vayivarachem bayom hahu lemor becha Yavarech Yisrael lemor Yashimcha Elohim ke'Ephraim v'chimnashe vayasem et Ephraim lifnei Menashe vayomer Yisrael el Yosef hine anochi meit v'chaya Elohim imachem והשיב אתכם אל ארץ אבותיכם. ואני נתתי לך שכם אחד על אחיך, אשר לקחתי מיד האמורי, בחרבי ובקשתי. So he blessed them that day, saying, By you shall Israel give blessing, saying, May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. And he put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. Israel then said to Joseph, I'm dying now, but God will be with you and bring you back to the land of your ancestors. And I have given you first among your brothers the Shechem mountain ridge, which I won from the Amorites with my sword and my bow. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Well, as we continue our celebration, we now have the honor of lifting and dressing the Torah. For the honor of helping with the dressing of the Torah, I'd like to call up Kim DeSelles. The rest of the congregation I'd like to invite to rise in body or in spirit. Please be seated. Just as we ask our young people to take the words of our Torah and bring them to life for us, literally sharing words that have been passed down the generations from one to the next for thousands of years, so too do we ask them to bring to life sections from the rest of our Nach, the rest of our Bible. And so Xander will be reading from the first book of Kings this morning, bringing these words to life for us as well.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar bin ve'im tovim v'ratza v'divrehem ha'ne'emarim ba'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher v'torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo u'v'nvi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek. Vayishak David im avotav vayikaver ba'ir David v'hayimim asher malach David al Yisrael arba'im shana b'Hevron malach sheva shanim u'v'Yerushalayim malach shloshim v'shalosh shanim u'Shlomo yashav al kisei David aviv vatikon malchuto me'od. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzor kol haolamim tzadik b'chol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer v'oseh ha'medaber u'makayem shekol devarav emet v'tzedek al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al hanvi'im ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu likdusha v'limnucha lechavod ultifaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach umvarchim otach yitbarach shimcha B'fi kol chai tamid le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai v'kadesh ha'shabbat.
Amen. Well, there's one and only one thing that we can say after reading from the Torah so well, from offering the words of our Bible in such a profound way, and that is, I want to invite us to use the words Yashar Koach. We had a little bit of a preview of that last night, right? So on the count of three, I want to invite us to offer the words Yashar Koach, meaning go forward with the same strength that you led us this morning. Let's do this together. 1, 2, 3. Yashar Koach. Way to go, Xander. And Mazel Tov. And Mazel Tov. Well, just as you have taken these words and literally, word for word, and brought them to life for us, so too do I want to give you the opportunity to teach us a little bit about these words. Knowing full well that if we were just to share the exact same words generation after generation, it wouldn't teach us as much as it could by hearing what your thoughts are, what you have to say about them. And so, very selfishly, Xander, I'm excited for you to share with us your profound teaching this morning.
My Torah portion is called Vayechi, and it covers a lot of ground. However, what intrigued me most about the portion was the relationship between Joseph and his siblings. As a child, Joseph was always favored by his parents, and his siblings knew this, resulting in Joseph being bullied and hurt by them. Eventually, they sold Joseph into slavery, and he was brought to Egypt, where he ended up getting a position of power. Once a famine struck, Joseph's siblings were forced to come to Egypt, where, upon realizing their brother was in power, they begged them not to harm them. To their surprise, Joseph was not angry, and instead promised to care for them and their families. I have 2 younger brothers who I, not uncommonly, get angry at. However, in the long run, I know that they mean no harm, and I always end up forgiving them. My brothers have definitely hurt me throughout the years, but we always come into an apology and forgive each other. Forgiving's not easy. It takes a lot of courage to do so. I know from experience that a lot of the time you don't want to forgive someone, especially if they did something you really don't like, but it is the right choice. Holding grudges and hatred never ends well, and it only hurts the person holding the grudge. And although forgiving is difficult, you should still do so. Growing up, Joseph's brothers absolutely despised him. They were bitter and jealous towards him because he always got treated better than they were. So, when Joseph was finally in a position of power over them, he could have retaliated and punished them. But he didn't. His generosity, even after the things they did to him, made them realize that Joseph had changed, and they saw him in a different light. When Joseph pointed out that although they meant badly in the past, everything worked out in the end and resulted in Egypt, and thus the neighboring countries, surviving the famine. Joseph's positivity and willingness to forgive his brothers allowed them to put the past bad deeds behind them. Not only can this lesson apply to my life and my siblings, but everyone can learn that, regardless of past bad deeds, there is no reason not to forgive people. We all make mistakes and do bad things, and these things may anger people, but we should all know that, like Joseph, we can put such bad things behind us and make something good out of it. Not everything that may seem bad at the time will necessarily be bad in the end. A perfect example is the pandemic. I'm not saying that we should ignore how terrible this pandemic has been for so many people. A lot of people died and families have suffered. We all know that this pandemic has not been good. Yet, believe it or not, there has been a positive side to it for me. My family was brought closer together than ever before because of quarantine. We all learned to be more considerate and understanding. We realized that to live peacefully in a relatively small space, we all have to cooperate and respect each other and everyone's need for privacy when things happen. And they always do, to forgive. What we can all learn from my Torah portion is to be optimistic and open-hearted. Even in bad scenarios, we can always try to see the good sides of things and help others. For my mitzvah project, I wanted to teach kids in the hospital how to play video games, but the pandemic put a stop to that. But I still wanted to make a difference. My mom found the perfect project for me. I went over to a friend who fosters kittens for the San Bernardino Animal Shelter and helped take care of kittens as young as 3 weeks. I cleaned their litter box, among other chores, which was not fun, learned how to bottle feed them, and socialize them. These kittens were found on the streets, so they were not used to being around people. I picked them up, played with them, pet them, showed them they were loved, and had a fun time with them. I donated funds and even put together a cat tree for them to play in, which they adored. Overall, it was a great and adorable experience. One does not have to be a viceroy of Egypt to help others. I would not be here today without the help of some very special people. My mom, for cheering me on when things got tough. My dad, for getting me games and letting me give him hugs. My grandmother, for tutoring me and being very supportive. Ari, for showing me how to be positive. And Connor, for being an awesome person to play games with. A special thanks to Christina for letting me help take care of kittens, and Elijah for helping me help take care of the kittens. Thank you to Cantor Cooper for teaching me my Torah portion, and last but certainly not least, Rabbi Fox for helping me rehearse, for helping me write this, and for leading the service. And remember, when you have the choice between staying angry and forgiving, I hope you follow Joseph's example and always choose forgiveness. It's good for the heart. Thank you all for coming, and kittens are, Shabbat Shalom.
Well, Xander, as you have offered so many gifts to us this morning, we want to present some gifts to you as well. So I'd like to call up Cheryl Stahl, a member of our board of directors, to present you with some gifts.
I have just a few words to say, but I have to start by saying, wow. What amazing composure. I can totally see you presenting at an engineering or math conference sometime in your future, or teaching to a lecture hall. You're just amazing. When Michal asked me to be the board rep, I was so honored and pleased, and I thought, that's wonderful, I've known him all his life. But then I thought for a minute, and I've really known about him all his life, and seen him in bits and pieces at family events, at his bubbies or Michal's. So we had the opportunity to sit and chat over pancakes, and we just went on the whole gamut of course, Jewish stuff, but magic and Magic the Gathering, two totally different things, math jokes, and just had such a wonderful time. And I realized that all the wonderful things that your mom posted on the blog and that your Bubby's been telling me were mostly true. You really are an amazing, smart, thoughtful, self-aware young man with, I must say, amazing hair. So it is really my pleasure on behalf of the congregation to give you some tools that are your own, and ritual objects to continue your life as a member of the Jewish community. So, yeah, looks like we have from the board, from the men's club, and from the sisterhood. And all of us are just so proud to welcome you in. So, mazel tov.
Xander, I've been thinking for a while about what exactly I wanted to share with you this morning. And so let me begin by saying that once upon a time, we had to play video games without the benefit of the internet. Way back when, you would get a game, and it would either be like a console game, right? You'd put the cartridge in, or it was this huge thing when you had a disc, and you would put the disc, right? And most of us put them in their PlayStations. Some of us made emulators. That's another story, right? So, way back when you would play a video game, it was a little different. You wouldn't connect with other people online, and if you were lucky, there were people that you would have an extra controller for, an extra couple controllers for, and you'd be able to play with, but mostly you were playing kind of by yourself. And I have a vivid memory of finishing Final Fantasy VII. Have you played that one? No. Okay, all right, so, yeah, thank you, Jonathan. yeah, all right, so, yeah. I have a vivid memory of finishing it and feeling like I missed something about it. when I was done, when I didn't get to kind of go back and play it again. And I promise you, it was not the materia. It wasn't the items. I had plenty of Phoenix Downs. It was totally fine, right? The thing that I missed were the characters, the people in the story. I can still picture the way that they went through the story, all the different things that they grew and learned about throughout the game. It's the people that I missed. Xander, your Torah portion, I know, has no relevance to you whatsoever, because you don't have the benefit of knowing what it's like to have brothers, right? I mean, it's right. Okay, all right, maybe a little bit, right?
Maybe a little.
Okay, all right. I think that there are a tremendous amount of things that we can learn in our Torah. And one of the most profound things that is in your portion is that it's all about the people. Joseph goes on and could kind of, lord over these things over his brothers. And as you have taught us today, he decides not only to forgive them, but to keep them as an important part of his life. I know this. I also thought when I was thinking of these words that I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. I know you know this. Not just in what you shared so beautifully this morning, but what's in your heart, in all the conversations. You always, Connor and Ari, cover your ears. You always talk about your brothers. They mean so much to you. I think that all of us have so much to learn from you in this. Because as we read these stories, as we go about all of these different traditions and rituals, as we place a talit on our shoulders, all of it is so that we can draw nearer to the people that we love. And so, Xander, my hope for you is simply Yashar Koach. Continue on that path. And quite simply, thank you for showing us the way. Mazel tov. We have more blessings for you this morning. So Xander, I want to invite up your mom and dad. Those are your titles right now. To offer some words of blessing. Come on up, Jonathan, Michal.
Xander, you were named after your grandfather Albert and Alexander the Great, my personal hero, and a boy who was taught how to be great by a man named Aristotle, how to fight like a lion by the greatest warriors of his time, and who was given an army by the greatest military architect of his time, his father, Philip II. For all that, Alexander did not have an easy childhood. His training was brutal. He was given sparse amounts of food, and he was given no mercy in his training. This was all to prepare him to be the greatest conqueror and leader he would later become. You have not had an easy life either. By the time you were in second grade, you had been in no less than 5 schools, lived in 3 states, and 6 cities. Your nomadic early life made it impossible to maintain close relationships with friends and teachers, though the feeling of permanence in a home and community may have eluded you. What you did find was that your brothers and your parents were the rocks you could cling to and with whom you could weather any storm with. Because you lacked much in external affirmation, you learned to find that affirmation within yourself. The strength of an introvert is that they have a compass deep inside them that guides them. It cannot be disrupted. Although you struggle in feeling secure in early life, I saw you become stronger for it. You know what matters and what doesn't. You know that home is found in family, not in a location on a map. Moments after you were born, in my office at home, you stopped crying and just looked all around those deep blue eyes of yours, as if you were trying to understand the new world all around you. Right then, I knew you were keenly aware of the world around you, and you wanted to know and understand it. This is a pillar of who you are. The passion for wanting to know how this world works has led you to your favorite thing in the world, math. Well, it might be second to video games, but still math. You figure out that math is the code behind the program of our world. Math is the secret language of how this world works, and you seem to have made it your mission to become as fluent as possible in this language. I saw in you when you were just a few years old and found that learning math together, as odd as it might sound to the people here today, was our way to bond. I'll be honest with you. I never intended to be a stay-at-home parent for you, let alone for 3 boys. I mean, your mom and I, before we were married, agreed to have a parent stay home and raise our children. But it wasn't supposed to be me. It seems that fate didn't care that I was terrified of caring for small children. My parents were a disaster, and thus I had no example to go by or what to do. So I do apologize that I wasn't very good at it at the beginning, and I want to thank you for helping me learn to be a good parent. Even at age 3, when we would have a conflict, you would take the time to explain why you were sad and how I had hurt you in words far more articulate than any 3-year-old had the right to have. You helped me feel more confident by getting me to explain all the things I did know, and always patiently waited for me to finish my explanation without interruption. And to my surprise, you also listened, absorbing everything I could teach you. You absorbed information like a sponge, and our long commutes to and from school were filled with lessons about math and science. When you were in preschool, you learned how to multiply with me. Then in kindergarten, you learned exponents. Then in first grade, you learned how to convert the calendar date into binary as we sat in stop-and-go traffic. And for those that are wondering, today is 1100-1010-111111000101. Or for those in Europe, it's 10010-1100-111111000110. You taught me that all you need to be a good parent is to be present, and to let you know you are loved. The rest of the stuff is just stuff you have to get done. Your brothers owe you a great debt and gratitude for this. But now I am standing beside you and marveling at how you have grown. I can see that the seeds of kindness, of love, of knowledge, and the strength of character have taken root and are blossoming. I wonder if King Philip II looked down at his young Alexander at 13, as I look down upon you now, and wondering how all this talent will manifest when he's a man. Your mother and I may not be substitutes for Aristotle, but I hope that we have taught you enough so that you can use your deep understanding of the secret code of the world to make it a better place. You have the heart and intelligence and it is up to your drive and your passion to take you the rest of the way. I love you, I believe in you, and I will always be here for you.
Okay, let's not pretend. Here, come in between us. Xander. God, I just said his name. Sorry, everybody. I know that you must be feeling ever so relieved in this moment. The hard work of the bar mitzvah is done. You did it. You chanted beautifully, you taught us Torah, and you have persevered in your learning throughout these truly crazy pandemic years. I am still stuck on the fact that you're 13 and I'm actually giving the mom speech at your bar mitzvah. I've pictured this dozens, if not hundreds of times. Every single time I officiated at a b'nai mitzvah when I was in a congregation, I would listen to the parents speak, and I would think, wow, that's beautiful. I should remember those words when it's Xander's turn on the bima. And now it's here. And I find that all of my past experience in explaining and listening to parent blessings is not helping one whit. Because those kids' moments were about them. And this moment right here, this public recognition of your growing up and taking your place in the Jewish community is unique. You are unique. You always have been. When you were a toddler, you loved singing along to the Science album of They Might Be Giants just as much as Dolores Berkner. You couldn't yet talk, but you would use your hands to clearly illustrate the difference between a bulldozer, a backhoe, and a front loader. You really did. I had literally had to look it up. I will never forget the day when you were 3 years old and we went to a birthday party with one of those huge bounce houses. You didn't jump in it once, but you spent a full 40 minutes squatting on your haunches, observing the air ducts and the intake valve, figuring out how it worked. That day, I knew that you marched to the beat of your own drummer, and I loved it. You have been doing that ever since, finding the strength to be uniquely you. I so admire this quality in you, that you have no problem and even revel in standing apart from others. From not cutting your gorgeous hair to coming up with the exact right formula for determining the sequence of terms and sharing it with your math class, to having more fun figuring out the back end of a video game and cheating in its code than playing the game itself. You know what you want, and you're not afraid to go for it, regardless of what other people may think. That's a very rare quality, to have faith in yourself instead of always looking outwards for approval. Frankly, you do that much better than I do. I learn from you. It is my wish for you in life that you continue to figure out who you are and to stay true to that person. Because that person is and will continue to be awesome. I want you to keep building on your curiosity and your intellectual passions, and to persist in striving to reconcile that with the oft confusing emotions that roil within. Xander, you are the most dependable, responsible kid I know. If you say you'll do something, you do it. I'm sure that after the service, everyone here will come up to myself and my mother and compliment us, saying, wow, you taught him Hebrew so well. And I want you all to know, we had nothing to do with it. We barely did anything. He did it all himself because he said he would. Because when you commit, you keep your word. You are a good friend and a kind brother. You have a fantastic sense of humor, and you are loving and caring. You're truly a mensch. I love when we sit in the car or take a walk together and have deep conversations about various aspects of growing up, like why in the world do people engage in small talk? And what's the value of Judaism in the 21st century? And how do we know when it's safe to take risks? Your analytical mind drives you to constantly interpret the world. And the more you see the macro layers of how things work, the more you're able to figure out how to be your best self within it. I know you don't put much stock in spirituality, but I personally have faith that as time goes on, you will find your spiritual moments. I hope for you that you will feel connected and part of a greater whole, not just to our family, but beyond. It may never be through religion or temple community like me, and that's okay. You may find that connection in the perfect logic of an algebraic equation, in the philosophies of mathematics or physics or engineering. But however you find it, I hope that you will be open to it, to realize that you are inextricably tied to this world and the one beyond our ken. I do believe that you were put here for a purpose, and I have no doubt that as time goes on, you will discover what it is. Xander, if you take nothing else from today, please know how very, very proud I am of you. I love you beyond measure, to infinity to the infinitieth power. It was the biggest number I could think of. And I am utterly blessed to be your mother. I can't wait to see you mature and grow. And whatever may come, I will be at your side. I love you.
Xander, actually echoed in the words that you shared with us earlier this morning. There is a blessing that's been passed down through the generations, offered in sacred moments like this, and this morning, Xander, these words are for you.
Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
May God bless you and keep you.
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka.
May God's face be turned toward you in graciousness.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom.
May God always watch over you, and may you be blessed with peace. I invite us together to say, Amen.
Amen. Amen.
So come together. Yes. And we have a couple more that we need to invite up for this next blessing. So Ari and Connor, come on up. Well, anytime we have the chance to come together to celebrate a moment, literally Shehachianu, as we are brought to this moment in our lives, we offer these words of thanks.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
Congratulations.
we continue our service with the words of Aleinu on page 282. I'd like to invite us to please rise in body or in spirit.
Wow, you're strong. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'teit gedula le'yotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, ve'lo samanu k'mishpechat ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kachem, ve'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. You were very strong.
These doors are very heavy.
Yes, it's taken me a long time to work up to them.
Well, our thoughts now turn to those in our community who have died in recent days or in this season in years past. If you are joining us online on tilb.org, I'd like to invite you to share the names of those you are thinking of in the chat now. This morning, Xander and his family would especially like to call to mind Wayne Card, Abraham Rakowski, Albert Liss, Fagel Herbstman, Ethel Botax, Mel Morelli, Philip Mararo, and Miriam Mararo. Additionally, our hearts go out to those who are observing Shloshim this Shabbat. As we think of those near to Mark Hardy, we think of Heidi, Maxine, and Madeline, Jesse, and Kevin. We think of those near to Marcel Solomon, we think of Carol. Additionally, we mark the yard site, the anniversary of the death of Edna Albin, Gabrielle Barr, Emil Butler, Miriam Kodosh, Ann Cohen, Josiah Darlin, Kathy Dixon Davis, Rebecca Eden, Joseph Iser, Dorothy Faddick, Norm Pfeiffer, Donald Feek, Arthur Gardner, Harold Goodman, Bronna Greenberg, Cherry Gundry, Zev Hausnecht, David Hochstadt, Mark Janis, Norman Caddison, Irving Komsky, Rose Levine, Ying Lim, Bella Lutsky, Irene Mendel, Lil Naranz, Ted Phillips, Michael Rice, Louis Richmond, Herbert Summer, David Swit, Boris Tsipkis, Samuel Wolkowski, and Zumbul Yoje. If there is anyone that you are thinking of and you are here with us in our sanctuary this morning, I'd like to invite you to share their name aloud as my eyes meet yours. Together we turn to page 294 of our prayer books as we offer these words together in love and in solidarity. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, v'alma divarach yotei v'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, b'agalat v'zman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba meborach leolam u'me'el maya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudisha barichu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, damiram be'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim alinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, Amen. Osei shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, alinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru, Amen. Zichronam livracha, may the memories of those near to us always be a source of blessing. I invite us together to say, Amen. We have a nechemta, a little bit of a piece of oneg, of joy, right at the end of our prayer. An invitation that as we do allow ourselves to do the important work of remembering those who are lost, that we always place a positive note at the end of those same words, that same prayer. And so at the end of this prayer too, again, there is that nechemta, the words, O say shalom. I invite us to sing together. O say shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom Shabbat shalom, hey, Shabbat shalom, hey, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, hey, Shabbat shalom, hey, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. I'd like to call Xander and his family back up as we take this moment. Our rituals are always meant to reflect and experience a feeling that we might have in a particular moment, and so we take the sweetness of this day, we place it right there in our cups as we offer this blessing together. Go ahead and hold it. We'll do the blessing together. Well, let's offer the blessing all together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei uri hagafen. If you want, you can take a sip.
You don't know what you're missing.
Yes, it's fine.
And we have as well a blessing that's a little bit peculiar. It says, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, bread that rises out from the earth. But we know full well that bread does not rise from the earth. Instead, wheat rises from the earth. And there is a whole chain of work that brings this bread to our celebration. So too is there a village that lifts up a young person so that they can lead us in services and lead us in our community. And so we bless both this morning. Well, let's say the blessing all together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz v'te'avon. And amen. Shabbat shalom, mazel tov, everyone. Shabbat shalom. Congratulations, mazel tov.
Mazel tov. All right, are we able to eat that now?
Yes.
You can have it, yeah.
Seriously, no.
Go ahead. Go for it, man.
Tired?
Tired? You feel happy, relieved, proud?
Yeah, I guess. Sure. I'm not gonna get the mask. That's important. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I was the one that was cleaning.
I am both. Yes, my name is
I did it
Zane.
more often than you.
True.
I still did it.
What?
You know what being Nathan's for?
No.
You're not supposed to wear glasses. You're too young.
Ellie, David, how do you do? How do you do? That's a friend. That was awesome.
You go to Xander's house. You go to Xander's house.
Yeah, turn more smart and less hype.
Amazing. I'm so proud of you too.
Oh, thanks. I don't know what I did. It was all...
I have to do this.